Welcome to the Unpacking the Framework video series. This series provides valuable information about the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention. My name is Denise Luscombe, and this video introduction is being recorded on Whadjuk Noongar Budja. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and the land you are listening from, and recognise their continued connection to country, waterways and community. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. This video is one of a series that describes the evidence and practice information that underpins the principles of the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention. You will hear from both national and international speakers throughout this video series. This video covers strengths-based, a universal principle of the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention, and is presented by our international speaker, Dr Bonnie Keilty. Bonnie has worked in early childhood intervention for over 30 years, including research, teaching, practice, and national service. Dr Keilty is an independent contractor supporting early intervention systems in the United States as they develop innovative approaches to recruitment, retention, and development of early intervention professionals, braiding pre-service, in-service, and leadership education. Dr Keilty has held faculty positions at various universities, most recently as tenured professor at Hunter College, City University of New York. Dr Keilty's research and published articles focus on family professional partnerships, prenatal supports, home visit planning and implementation, effective inclusion practices, and professional development and preparation. All of her work stresses the translation of research and theory to practice. Dr Keilty and collaborators created The Envelope, a video discussion series focused on ways of working with families at the intersection of family strengths and family support provision. Dr Keilty has written 2 books on early intervention: the Early Intervention Guidebook for Families and Professionals Partnering for Success, 2016, in its 2nd edition, and 7 Essentials for Family Professional Partnerships in Early Intervention, 2017, as well as co-edited the monograph Family, Knowing Families, Tailoring Practices, Building Capacity. Dr Keilty is a former president of the Division for Early Childhood, or DEC, of the Council for Exceptional Children, the international professional association for those who work with or on behalf of young children with disability and their families. Dr Keilty has provided early intervention and early childhood special education supports to families in homes, communities, and classrooms. Dr Keilty has a master's and doctorate in early intervention, early childhood special education, as well as a graduate certificate in maternal and child health from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much for the introduction. As I share my thoughts on the strengths-based principle, I'm also going to be sharing the words of families who've participated in our strengths-based intervention. I thank these families for their engagement in our research and their powerful words. So what are your strengths? Sounds like an easy question, but not so much. When one thinks of strengths, there's a tendency to look for something unique or something one excels at beyond what anyone else can do. While strengths are positive and powerful, strengths can be anything intrinsically or extrinsically available to an individual that propels them in meeting their hopes, wants, and desires, what we in early childhood intervention usually call goals or outcomes. When we shift our mindset that strengths are what a family or child brings to meeting their goals, it opens up a wealth of possibilities where we don't have to identify anything extraordinary, but whatever the family or child already knows, has, or does can be a strength. But why is identifying, honoring, and using family and child strengths important in early childhood intervention? Research shows that confidence in one's parenting, which includes being confident in helping their child learn, is directly related to meeting family outcomes, enhancing child learning, and engaging in positive parent-child interactions. Let's take a look at each of these impacts. Family outcomes, that families have people they trust and can rely on, positive relationships with each other, and a sense of overall fulfillment and well-being. We know the better these family outcomes, the better the child outcomes. We also have loads of research showing that parent-child interaction is one of the most significant predictors of child development in multiple areas, including cognition, social, emotional, and literacy development. We also know that the effectiveness of early childhood intervention is dependent on supporting families in using positive interaction strategies. And of course, the outcome of child learning and development is why families are enrolled in early childhood intervention in the first place. So it's all connected with parenting confidence, also known as self-efficacy, being a major driver of meeting all of these outcomes. So how is this connected to strengths-based interventions? Research has shown interventions that affirm and utilize what families already do to help their child learn, again, one of family's many strengths, actually increases parenting sense of confidence and competence. And this makes sense. Helping one's child learn and develop is an integral part of being a parent. Families teach their children functional abilities, how to interact and cope with the world, how to learn. And they teach all of this within the family's individual cultural values and ways of being, so the child discovers the world from that same cultural lens. Families of children with disabilities or developmental delays may feel less confident or competent in helping their child learn. As one family put it, when you have a special needs kid, you're always wondering, am I doing the right thing or am I not doing it right? Strengths-based interventions appreciate family strengths, that families are doing the right thing, and then build on those strengths by tweaking current strategies families are already using and trying out new ways to build on those strengths to meet their desired outcomes. In strengths-based interventions, families are reinforced in their ability to help their child learn, increasing parenting sense of confidence and competence, and subsequently quality parent-child interaction and positive child outcomes. And child strengths show families all the great things that their children know and can do, which when connected to all the great things that families do to help them learn, can promote even further confidence and competence. Otherwise, if the focus is solely on the child's deficits, then families will wonder what they're not doing right. So while this research focuses on family strengths related to helping their child learn specifically, the same can be said for honoring and utilizing family strengths in meeting family outcomes with the same expected results. So often, family professional partnerships in early childhood intervention identify what families bring to the partnership. Their strengths are knowing their child and knowing their family, while professionals bring their strengths of understanding child development and disability, as well as strategies to promote development. But what does this mean in terms of practice? What do strengths-based interventions look like? Strengths-based interventions recognize that families come to early childhood intervention with knowledge, skills, and perspectives to contribute. They have a history of thinking about, seeking to understand, and meeting their vision and priorities for their family and their child. In our research, we observed families with infants and toddlers with developmental delays or disabilities as they went about their day, just everyday life. In the 2 to 4 hours we observed, we found families used a range of 27 to 32 different types of strategies, responsive caregiving approaches, and physical environmental adaptations that helped their child learn. And when looking at just one 75-second example, we could identify 15 times the family did something that could help their child learn. Now, all of these were not individualized or specialized strategies of what they might learn in early childhood intervention, although some were. But many strategies were things that we do with all kids that we know promote their development and what all families do. And these strategies are just as important for children with developmental delays or disabilities. And also, while some strategies were those learned with early childhood intervention professionals, many were not. They were ones that the family identified. So family strengths includes how families come up with strategies to help their child learn. But there's other things we learned from this research too. First, when we asked families how they helped their child learn before we observed, they maybe identified one or two different ways, but most didn't identify any. They certainly didn't identify the sheer number that we found. And when we asked families about certain strategies we saw, families had very intentional reasons for using those strategies, but they just didn't see what they were doing as strategies or anything special. They were just being a parent as in their minds. So back to the idea that one's own strengths are really not that easy to see. So strengths-based interventions support families in seeing those strengths. However, the second thing we learned was the reasons families shared about why they used particular strategies were not always those that we, with our professional lens, thought when we first saw them. So understanding where families are coming from for using certain developmentally promotive strategies, their strengths, then allows us to use the family's lens when developing strengths-based interventions. So family strengths need to come from the family as opposed to the professional. So strengths-based interventions start by observing to identify the potential strategies the family uses to help their child learn, and then discuss those with the family to understand their perspective. That way, the family lens is the focus of intervention rather than expecting the family to shift to our professional lens. Sometimes interventions do identify the strategies families use to help their child learn. Again, this is often identified by the professional and from the professional's lens. But even if identified by the family and through their lens, these strategies or strengths are then left behind to focus on new strategies. But in strengths-based interventions, we not only acknowledge the ways families help their child learn, but we honor them by considering them as just as important strategies to promoting child learning and development as any strategy agreed upon during early childhood intervention. So ways that we can honor the strategies that families are already using to help their child learn is to spend time discussing specifically how those strategies are already promoting development, their child's current strengths or competencies. These strategies can also be listed on planning forms and visit notes where strategies are included. This creates equity in what the family is already doing and bringing to the early childhood intervention partnership, with anything new resulting from brainstorming with professionals. That equity is built there. And families have reported that this promotes their confidence and competence by really showing that the family knows the child. Professionals can also identify ways to modify or tweak what the family is already doing rather than coming up with brand new strategies. This also reinforces the family's current strategies while enhancing their effectiveness. When new strategies are introduced, families may interpret it as what they're doing is insufficient or incorrect, which could decrease confidence and competence. One family described this as, to say to families, you're already doing this, we just need you to do X, Y, and Z, make some modifications or tweaks. That's probably not as overwhelming as telling, well, you're doing it all wrong and you need to do this. So families interpret new strategies as the family is doing it all wrong. So instead, professionals use their strengths in observing, discussing, and brainstorming with the family ways to modify what's already happening, so that child interventions and family confidence and competence are maximized. And then any new strategies that are tried are limited to those necessary and that fit within the family's everyday life and cultural lens. This fit recognizes, respects, and honors that a family's individual ways of being are their strengths. Those times of the day early childhood intervention focuses on do not need to look the way a professional might go about it. Who is a part of that time, such as other children in the family, they are still part of that time. How those individuals engage in the time is the same as well. For example, if siblings are there, but doing their own thing, then they get to continue to be present and keep doing their own thing. They don't have to join the intervention unless that's what the family wants. But their presence is part of the family ecology and considered when brainstorming strategies. That way, families can see how easily strategies can fit into their life and that using certain strategies is a part of parenting rather than feeling like they're turning into professionals or their day is designed in a clinical manner. For families then, the strategies feel more comfortable, more of a flow for the parent and not something like work. Families want to work on things every day with their child that are not always necessarily educationally based, more play or practical things in the home. In other words, how all families promote their child's learning and development, regardless of their child's developmental status. That way, families retain their power as the one promoting their child's learning and development, while the professional is a trusted source of information, advice, and brainstorming rather than replacing the parent. Professional strengths are still respected by families. As one family stated, professionals are those who studied it and who have guidance and the types of tools to really help us. Another aspect of strengths-based interventions is considering the words we use and ways we describe children and families. Strengths-based interventions are often misconstrued that in order to focus on strengths means that professionals are supposed to disregard needs. This is not the case. Instead, it's how needs are viewed. Needs can be reframed as things everyone has, which is true. Everyone has goals and everyone has needs, but we don't necessarily think about it that way in everyday life. Yes, we need to get our kids up and out the door. We need to go to work. We need to take care of our family. But in everyday life, we don't necessarily include the word need. It sounds like a chore. Instead, it's just what we do. We get our kids up and out the door. We go to work and we take care of our family. In early childhood intervention, need is considered something lacking rather than something to do. So instead of reframing needs, how about retiring needs and focus on what the family does? Anything that can enable or simplify the family in doing those things can be viewed as resources to access rather than needs. The same practices for family strengths and promoting child learning and development can be used to focus on family outcomes. Attending to a parenting outcome of including their child in their community can first focus on family's current strengths. What does the family already do in terms of engaging with their community as they define it, such as culturally or a locality like neighborhood connections? What's working and what could be tweaked? Then what else to try? What resources to access? Notice not what does the family need, what resources to access. Identifying and accessing resources might be disability specific, where the professional strengths come in, such as connecting with the deaf community for families with babies with hearing impairments, or diagnosis-specific family support opportunities, such as the vast network of organizations for families with children identified with Down syndrome. These new resources are not seen as a deficit in their absence, but as future resources that build on rather than replace the family's current strengths in community and subsequently their child's sense of identity. Or take an example of a family whose car has broken down, with the family's outcome of getting places they expect to go. What are the family's current resources? Maybe there's a friend whose child goes to the same school who might be able to drop off and pick up their children, or a parent who might agree to pay for repairs. And then identify any tweaks to these resources, such as trading meals with the friend so that the family doesn't feel like they're taking advantage or using their friend. And then new resources can also be identified, such as ways to access public transportation routes until the car is repaired. Same for children. All children have current competencies. These competencies may not fit what is expected of their age by normative expectations, which usually do not fit various cultural expectations anyway. But child competencies, what they currently know, feel, and do, provide the foundation upon which to build new competencies. An infant may focus on their parent when they speak and smile. This focus turns into responding to and initiating such interactions with smiles and sounds, which is then the foundation for building back and forth turn-taking of communication with syllables and words, or back and forth banging objects together, taking turns. And then this is further developed into complex conversations and problem solving with objects. Now, when a child is considered typically developing and their current competencies are at any point in this developmental progression, no one feels that they have to point out what the child is not doing or consider what they're not doing as needs. Instead, they are thought of as next developmental steps. These same descriptors can be used for children whose families are enrolled in early childhood intervention. Their goals, outcomes, objectives, etc., can be viewed as next developmental steps with their strengths as the foundation upon which to build them. So what are strengths-based approaches with regard to child learning and development? Strengths-based interventions identify what the child does or can do rather than what the child cannot or does not do in very objective language. For example, if a child tantrums when they're told no, strengths-based positioning might be to describe that as the child communicates frustration in being denied a toy by screaming. There's no confusion here in what the child does as their current competencies are objectively described, and though with a positive purpose to their screaming, namely, it's their way of communicating. In this example, the next step, not need, is having an alternative mode of communication. And that's clear from describing the child in strengths-based language. But sometimes professionals are concerned that describing a child's current competencies may not convey why early childhood intervention is needed, justified by a developmental delay or disability. But professionals can preface any strengths-based descriptions as those that are, in fact, what the child's current competencies are, their learned skills, or any other language that you want to use in which you're describing what the child knows or can do. Then you can interpret these competencies within normative expectations when necessary, again with the caveat that most normative scales and expected milestones do not necessarily fit all cultures. Also, if Another strategy is to put these competencies within the everyday ecology, the social interactions, physical environmental features, and timing of what the child is expected to do, to then be able to draw a connection between the benefits of intervention strategies to tweak or try to build the child's competencies. Another area of child strengths are their interests. What motivates them to engage, participate, and learn? And this is no different than for any of us. What school subjects did you do better in? What professional development do you want to attend? Which subjects or professional development did you do or try to avoid? You most likely did better and focused more on those that were of interest to you. So strengths-based interventions see child interests as strengths and either use these already existing interests or build interest into the routines where the child is not interested to set the context for learning. So one context for learning, as well as achieving family outcomes, is the family's individual community. One's definition of community can be narrow, such as a neighborhood or a small group of friends. Community can also be one's cultural community and ways of being. There are also community resources, such as childcare centers, libraries, parks, and other places where many families, or specifically families of young children, reside and participate. We know that across all these definitions of community are rich sources of learning and resources to meet family outcomes within the individual family's culture and way of being. It can be seen in the small store owners who keep an eye on children when they're outside. It can be seen in child care centers who ask for early intervention to share ways they can embed individualized strategies into their day. It can be seen in the accessible park equipment or the family who's at the park at the same time, sharing caregiving ideas with the family. Just like children and families, every community has strengths. One just intentionally looks for them. And just like families, communities may be different from those a professional is personally connected to, but that does not diminish the power of and value to the families who are connected to those communities. So far, we've identified the strengths professionals bring to early childhood intervention as expertise in child development, disabilities, and intervention strategies, the capacity to shift to and work within the family's lens, and skills in observing, discussing, and brainstorming to further enhance family confidence and competence in promoting their child's learning and development. Strengths-based interventions also require a professional mindset that acknowledges and utilizes the strengths of family, child, community, and themselves as professional. A strengths-based mindset believes all families are successfully meeting their family and child goals. They believe all families utilize both internal and external strengths. They believe all children have strengths and are using those strengths to learn and develop. They believe that every community has strengths valued by those who are a part of that community. And they believe that professionals can be viewed as another resource used by families to honor their already existing strengths and resources to meet family and child priorities. Now, how one practices their actions convey these beliefs. If one does not truly believe, this will show in their actions. This mindset may require an expansion of one's current strengths brought to their partnerships with families in early childhood intervention. These strengths include a willingness to try new things and take risks in the ways they use their knowledge and expertise. To do this, professionals are open to new understandings that may be different from what they once believed, and then work to master these new skills. Professionals' current and future strengths are blended to maximize effectiveness by coming to early childhood intervention with curiosity and humility.
We hope you've enjoyed this video, part of the video series Unpacking the Framework for the National Best Practice Framework for Early Childhood Intervention. The review of best practice in early childhood intervention was commissioned by the Department of Social Services. Led by the University of Melbourne, the project team included PRECI, professionals and researchers in early childhood intervention, Murdoch Children's Research Institute, SNAKE, National Voice for Our Children, Children and Young People with Disability Australia, and ACD, Advocating for Children with Disability. Coordination and production of the video series was led by PRECI.